Well everyone, the darkest aspect of this game is that Miiverse is dead.
Oh!
The Wind Waker is one of those special, unforgettable games for me that lasts a lifetime. It's my second favorite Zelda next to Majora's Mask, which, despite how utterly different they look and feel, actually makes some amount of sense. Wind Waker was the 3D adventure that directly succeeded it after all, and quite a bit more of this game's ideas and mechanics than I initially realized were borrowed from Link's offbeat quest in Termina. Aesthetically, the Wind Waker was clearly a stark departure from the more mature visual direction Zelda seemed to be continuing to push from the N64 days with that infamous Space World 2000 demo and the debut of these characters on the then modern console with Super Smash Bros. Melee. Back when this game was first announced, the cel-shaded, overly comical approach was not well received by some longtime fans because they were scared the series was going to start catering to a younger demographic. None of these fans knew the grittier Twilight Princess would be ready for them in about 4 more years, but in hindsight, if they had just peered down past the lookout platform and below the surface of the ocean, they would realize that they didn't even have to wait that long to be reassured, because despite its appearance, the Wind Waker has arguably some of the most adult plot elements in any Zelda game to date, which is of course the topic of today's video. In terms of debates over which game is the darkest in the entire series, I often see the aforementioned Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess chosen as the top candidates pitted against one another. The Wind Waker rarely even arises as a contender, but leaving it stranded out at sea in these polls is definitely a mistake. So say goodbye to your poor old grandma, and then leave her to be plagued with nightmares from worry, because we're getting this macabre party started like a gang of pirates looting treasure from the private oasis of a schoolteacher with redeads in her basement for some reason. The first dark aspect that sinks things below the proverbial iceberg is the game's opening, which is, in my opinion, one of the best introductions to any game ever. After pressing start on the title screen, but not before listening to that main theme all the way through, obviously, the beginning cutscene tells the legend of how Link, the hero of time from Ocarina of Time, vanquished Ganon and saved that version of the Kingdom of Hyrule we've all come to love. But predictably, that peace did not last, and the King of Evil was revived sometime after that hero had inexplicably departed and never returned. When the hero of time was called to embark on another journey and left the land of Hyrule, he was separated from the elements that made him a hero. It is said that at that time, the Triforce of Courage was split into 8 shards and hidden throughout the land. With no one courageous enough to save them, the Hyruleans prayed to their gods, who had no choice but to answer Ganon's unstoppable onslaught by completely flooding the land under a perpetual heavenly rain. The survivors of this divine deluge, as apparently hand-picked by the gods themselves, were told to flee to the mountaintops, which then became the various islands of the Great Sea. The old world was drowned out, but Hyrule Castle remained encapsulated in a bubble beneath the waters, suspended in time by the Master Sword locking Ganon in an eternal prison frozen in time. Likely because, as explained in Skyward Sword, his essence can't truly be destroyed. He will always return as a reincarnation of Demise, the king of all demons. The gods' last resort attempt to seal him forever under the ocean didn't work, of course. At least without the help of a new hero, who is also named Link, and who may or may not actually be a reincarnation of the old hero, depending on how you interpret certain in-game dialogue. The one I have brought with me has no connection to the legendary one, and yet I sense great promise in the courage that this one possesses. That's from the King of Red Lions, and then there's alternatively, yes, surely you are the hero of time reborn from Ganondorf. Regardless, this crazily lovable kid eventually earns the gods' recognition as the true hero, dubbed the Hero of Winds, and ultimately finishes what they could not. It'd be natural to think, since this world is now mostly made up of ocean, that the Zora, the series' recurring fish species known to live in both fresh and salt water, would be thriving as this game's primary race. However, as explained by the Zelda series Bible, Hyrule Historia, and as expressed in the game itself via Medley being Larudo's descendant, the Zora's fate is unexpected and a tad disturbing. Reportedly, the ethereal rainwater that created the Great Sea is very different from Hyrule's native waters, so the Zora had to evolve because they couldn't safely live in it. That's a suspicious explanation, I think, to keep Hyrule's fate a secret from everyone. Anyway, as a result, they amusingly became the bird-like people born from this game, the Rito. No, not Dorito, say it with me, the Rito. And before you ask how they coexist with the Zora in Breath of the Wild, it's a real thing called divergent evolution, just like with apes and us humans.
Monkey! Scapelli?
Before we move on from the Zora evolving into the Rito though, I wanted to comment on a certain member of this new race, Kaboli, the post office manager, who looks exactly and fittingly like the postman of Majora's Mask. You could say that technically this is an Ocarina of Time character, but because he boasts the same profession here, it looks like this is a descendant from Termina, as is the case with Baito the part-timer. And at least with Kaboli, we know that this isn't just a strange lookalike of an age past. He's said to come from generations of postmen, and is heavily implied to be a descendant of this one specifically, or his Hylian equivalent, if you believe that awful retcon from the Hyrule Encyclopedia about Termina disappearing after Link saves it. With this all said, that means that there must have been some interspecies relations going on between this man and a member of the Zora tribe. Yeah. With both Princess Ruto and Mipha of Breath of the Wild expecting to marry Link, this isn't exactly looked down upon in the world of Zelda. I just wanted y'all to know that the postman from Majora's Mask very likely retired in Great Bay and had his happily ever after with a fish lady. That's where he was running to after being given the order to flee Clocktown. Enough about fish cake though. Let's move away from Great Bay and back to the Great Sea, which is not just uninhabitable to the Zora, but any creature besides monsters and these, charming fishmen some sailors are terrified by. Both the Salvage Corporation and Ganondorf confirm that there are no fish to catch in these waters, though there are fishermen and fishing tools to be found, so perhaps they travel outside of the Great Sea, past the invisible wall our boat dad won't let us explore. Link's talking boat companion, the King of Red Lions, claims the areas outside of the map are too dangerous, which is saying quite a lot as there's plenty to fear here with the big octos and other beasts of the deep, along with ravaging cyclones and, you know, the pure, soul-freezing horror that is the ghost ship. It's all a far cry from his once quaint life on Outset Island, a small landmass a handful of villagers call home, northwest on the greater map of the sea. This Link is the only Link in the entire series so far to have a sister named Errol, who is actually inspired by Marin from Link's Awakening, as evidenced by their love of seagulls and the hibiscus motif that replaces Zelda as the damsel in distress this time, for most of the game. Zelda also gets kidnapped later. This initial subversion was put into place by the story writers who wanted to make sure players cared about Link's quest. So, quote, on top of the urgency that comes with saving the world, they added the kidnapping of Link's sister for more personal stakes, unquote. I think this worked very well, and the developers must have thought so too, because this concept of a character dear to Link being captured just as we were getting to know them reappears in the following 3D Zelda games Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, to great effect, with Ilia and even Zelda herself respectively taking the role of Link's close childhood friend. Speaking of, there's a really great, albeit easily missable touch, in that most of the islanders who didn't see what happened will comment on Link looking pale, or asking him what's wrong after Errol's gone, even if the rest of their dialogue stays the same. Except for this guy, who's outside but is so preoccupied with cutting grass that his vision of a well-manicured lawn distracted him from the deafening screams. The former example is the kind of attention to detail I'm absolutely obsessed with, and why I take the time to talk to the same NPCs throughout the journey in these types of games. I just have to know if the scriptwriters accounted for weird players like me. So why does this sweet young girl get snatched up by a monstrous bird in the first place? Well, this incarnation of Ganondorf has made sure to cover all of his bases this time around. To start, the Wind and Earth Sages, Fado and Laruto respectively, were canonically murdered by him, indirectly through his henchmen, the bosses Molgara and Jalhala, according to the Hyrule Encyclopedia, because these sages possess the ability to bless the Master Sword, granting it the holy power to repel his evil. He also uses the heavily guarded Forsaken Fortress as a prison for young girls with pointed ears like Errol, captured by his servant, the colossal Helmrock King, in hopes of finding Princess Zelda, who is secretly the pirate captain Tetra, and by extension, the second piece of the wish-granting Triforce necessary for his endgame. His meticulous planning proves to be all for naught, however, when he makes the grave mistake of capturing Link's sister, which inadvertently sets his inevitable downfall into action. This new Link is not summoned by a higher power because his destiny has always been to save the world. His call to action is simply to save his little sister, and he's willing to cross oceans with a band of quote-unquote sea rats to get her back. He accidentally gets roped into his greater fate because Ganondorf snatched the wrong girl away from her plucky big brother. Zelda games often explore this theme of growing up by forcing its protagonist to leave behind what's comfortable and brave new waters, quite literally in this case. It's sad to see Link depart his cozy village on Outset Island and all of the friendly, albeit eccentric faces the player just formed warm connections with moments ago. Link's childhood was robbed from him, a pain that surely persists even after Errol is rescued and the one responsible for her kidnapping is punished. Outset Island will always be there waiting for Link, but after all of his trials and tribulations on this quest, things can never truly be the same again. The King of Red Lions even tells Link that the key to defeating Ganon is locked away in a great power that you can wield only after much toil and hardship. All of the Links that came before and will come after him are destined for greatness, but will have to endure an ample amount of suffering to fulfill that destiny. Not that this one hasn't already with that introductory dungeon. If you couldn't tell where I'm going with this, my next talking point is the prison break episode that is the Forsaken Fortress. A desolate tower home to the impish mini-blins that always emerge in packs from out of nowhere to prod Link with their pitchforks. This taboo place is guarded by many more members of the Blin family, most notably the Moblins, who patrol the stronghold and are invulnerable to any attack at the start of the game, but offer shoddy surveillance for Ganondorf, as sneaking past them in a barrel is all it takes to outwit these goons. They at least know better than to trust a moving barrel, however, so stealthily trotting to the top of the tower isn't as easy as I'm making it sound. And while it may look ridiculous to fool guards like this in an oversized barrel, the act itself is genuinely intense and nerve-wracking, if anything because of the potential for progress lost due to a risky movement, or a pesky rat giving away your position. When the Moblins suspect Link, a warning sound effect plays as the camera suddenly jerks over to the witness as they stop what they're doing to look over his way and investigate. If Link moves again, or is no longer hidden in this moment, they will throw down their lantern to entrap Link in flames, then capture him and lock the poor boy up inside of a jail cell. It's easy enough to escape from and try again, sure, but this entire sequence sneaking around the Forsaken Fortress can easily make one feel uneasy. Searchlights and Moblins in the flesh aren't the only things to avoid here either, as Moblin statues exist solely to ruin Link's day. If spotted, the bust will peer towards him with a glowing red-eyed stare which shoots out lasers or spits fire if you're facing off against the version found in the Savage Labyrinth. Ganondorf sits atop this impenetrable fortress as its leader, waiting for the day the Helmarok King brings him the royalty he's been perpetually searching for. Ganondorf didn't build this place from nothing. It had existed well before he arrived, and is rumored in external material to have been the Gerudo Fortress at one point in time. The fort was once occupied by other pirates Tetra used to compete with, who apparently used it as a hideout before he took over. Which begs the question, did Ganondorf simply scare them away, or did he slay these rival pirates and use their skulls as decoration to so kindly threaten intruders who dare enter his domain? And for that matter, is there also dried blood painted on the outside of the room where he resides? Even if these potential scare tactics aren't enough to impede Link, he cannot be challenged on the first or even second visit, as he initially orders the giant rooster to toss the boy out into the open sea, then later laughs at the sorry state of the Master Sword and extemporaneously knocks Link for a loop. The hero of winds is almost executed right then and there, but luckily Tetra swoops in to save him, along with the Rito and the Great Valu, who torches Ganondorf's watchtower with a brilliant dragon flame. Unfortunately, this chance encounter clues him in that Tetra is actually Princess Zelda, which eventually leads to her capture towards the end of the game, helped by the fact that Link is kind of distracted during that time, with restoring the edge of evil's bane necessary to challenge him by the prayers of the sage's spirits with help from their descendants. Overall, I like Zelda's role as Tetra even better than her disguise as Sheik, even though her personality seems to change as drastically as her looks following this reveal, because I think that her upbringing as an orphaned pirate who took the mantle of leader after her mother died is such an unexpected direction to have taken the character who's nearly always born into royalty. Before rescuing the pirate-turned-princess, however, I want to first talk about a couple of different types of characters Link saves along the way. One of them is named Maggie, the daughter of the poor beggar who comes into wealth once she's freed from the Forsaken Fortress, because a Moblin guard took a liking to her, and gave the girl very many skull necklaces her daddy then sold to become filthy rich. Unlike Mila's father, who gave away his entire fortune to Tetra and her crew for rescuing her, then learning a very important lesson and accepting that money isn't the most important thing in the world, Maggie's father is unhumbled when they switch roles. You know what, that's not even true, as his heart wasn't in the right place as a street beggar either. He mostly stopped anyone who would listen to inform them of his stolen daughter, but would proceed to make an offhand comment about his predicament not earning him any rupees. This self-entitled man has probably always had a rotten core, and unfortunately the universe rewarded him for it. This privileged, pompous nobleman refers to Link as a wretched street urchin, and bans the postman from delivering any of Mo the Moblin's letters to the old man's daughter. Worryingly, however, Maggie wants them, because she's madly in love with this burly guy with a goofy grin and a big pig butt. The payoff is a joke in that this love is unrequited, as Mo is only interested in Maggie because he wants to eat her for dinner, since he's, a monster, which she delusionally mistakes as a marriage proposal. I've gotta say, she is a weird one, but I am equally impressed and disturbed that despite his sloppy handwriting, the beast is literate. He managed to write an entire sentence, and has an awareness of how the postal system works because he successfully put his letter into an envelope, stamped it, and dropped the thing inside a mailbox. If you're worried about Maggie's future well-being, just know that towards the end of the game, all baddies are eradicated from the Forsaken Fortress, very likely including her beloved Mo. She'll just have to find a new marriage partner who isn't in it for the money, or the food. Battling Moblins in this game can be both scary and funny, but all encounters that lead towards the former are made much worse when it's at night and thunderstorming, especially after witnessing Great Fish Isle for the first time with its curse of lightning and eternal dark clouds. During this sequence of the game, the sun will not rise again anywhere on any island of the Great Sea until Jaboon is located, and a song called The Great Sea is Cursed replaces the normally upbeat and adventurous overworld theme with a comparatively dour variant integrating Ganondorf's theme as a leitmotif, which works to emphasize the dire need to beat the pirates and reach the water spirit before they seize the opportunity. Barreling straight towards Windfall from here on Great Fish Isle means you'll very likely have a run-in with a previously mentioned Big Octo, specifically one with 12 eyes, the most of all of its species, meaning you'd better have good aim with a boomerang to take it down. A property unique to the Ghost Ship and Big Octos is that proceeding towards one or the other will cause the skies to darken immediately, regardless of how nice the weather was just a few moments ago. But during this cursed Great Sea segment of the game, the sky is already storming, so the only indication that you're sailing into the den of these behemoths are the seagulls that encircle it, before the inescapable whirlpool forms under Link's boat. The only way to make the Kraken cease its attack is to fell the beast, or to accept your demise as the eddy pulls you in and the sea monster makes a meal out of Link. He can't be too tasty though. I blame the wooden boat he's sailing on, because the giant squid simply deals some damage by spitting them out. A certain Great Fairy wasn't so lucky though, as she was apparently devoured alive by the Big Octo of Two-Eye Reef. The fact that it could swallow the Great Fairy is a terrifying thought, as Link must comparatively seem like a plankton. Their accompanying fight theme, Second Maritime Battle, is intensely intimidating too, only adding to the stress of the time limit. Speaking of large octopi, sea octoroks are smaller, although still impressively sized, squids that pop up out of the ocean blue with little warning to try and knock Link into the drink they erupted from. During the Triforce shard hunt, sometimes if your aim with the crane is slightly off near the spot a piece is located, an old vase will be salvaged instead. The dejected look on Link's face tells me that this was meant to be a joke/useless item put in by the developers, like fishing up trash in the Animal Crossing series, but a neat, admittedly annoying mechanic comes into play as soon as this seemingly worthless antique is reeled in. An Octorok will instantaneously spawn near your boat. Why? Well, that jar is actually an octopus trap used in Japan and other regions around the world to lure in octopi, who use it as a shelter with no bait necessary. It's a nice region-specific touch that at first seems inconsequential and random to us in the West without that context, but actually has a purpose that's neat to learn about, at least to me. While on the topic of Triforce shards and getting back to the Ghost Ship, Windfall Island's famous pictographer Lenzo informs us of a chilling rumor that the one who dared to chart the haunted vessel was met with an unexpected death as soon as he finished drawing the lines of the cursed map. The only other characters who have seen this monstrosity for themselves are the fishmen, who hesitate to even call it by name. They offer the most crucial clues about tracking down this spectral ship that fades in and out of sight, mostly by warning Link not to sail at that location during nights the ghost ship routinely appears, which is entirely dependent on the current phase of the moon, unless you've got a morbid curiosity and want to scare yourself so bad you won't be able to go to the bathroom at night anymore, apparently. In order to board this elusive boat, Link is required to find the aforementioned jinxed ghost ship chart by warping his way through a ship graveyard underneath Diamond Step Island. The chart allows the incorporeal ship to become temporarily tangible, and therefore boardable, rather than disappearing when Link gets too close. So what does this supposedly horrific watercraft look like up close, and what's on it? Nothing too terrible actually. The exterior bears a striking resemblance to Tetra's ship, although discolored and decayed, with blue flames surrounding it, which likely symbolize spirits as they do in various other Zelda games and Japanese media. When Link approaches the ship, the sky becomes tempestuous, and a plaintive track with a foreboding drumbeat begins playing. Stepping inside, the keel reveals it to be structurally the same as the explorable submarines found scattered across the map, but it does feature some unique properties that add to its fear factor, most notably above Link's head, where a cracked ceiling reveals a swarm of Hell Valley Skytree-like wraiths enveloping the ship. Their contorted faces are also seen as part of the ghastly fog that blankets the floor lined with skulls, which also chillingly and mysteriously leads to a lone light shining onto a single white flower. Defeating all of the enemies inside rewards the intruder, that's you, with a treasure chest containing a shard of the Triforce in the HD version. A fitting test of courage, followed by an unexpected scream heard when the prize is claimed and the screen fades to black, before Link comes to aboard his own boat. From this moment on, the ghost ship permanently vanishes and can never be gazed upon again in this playthrough. It seems that the treasure in tow was keeping the ship tethered to our world, doomed to endlessly roam the seas until someone takes away its burden. That is pretty haunting, as is the face on the wall that changes expression depending on Link's distance from it, ranging from straight face to slasher smile. Also exclusive to the original is a hair-raising glitch that can occur if the player tries to execute a jump slash near this particular chest, which causes the game to freeze. Of course, it can hard lock here in a very unsettling way of all places. As far as freaky foes, the monsters on land aren't any less scary looking than the ones out at sea. There's the classically horrifying Redeads and Floormasters, the former look and sound arguably even scarier than their N64 counterparts, while the latter are lonely, shadowy entities that have been given an arm, grabbing a screaming Link, Medley, or Makar by the cranium and yoinking them back into the same black hole they emerged from head first. All of the game's undead enemies can be found together in the Earth Temple too, which is essentially an underground crypt housing them. Even the boss, Jalhala, is made up of several Poes, aka ghosts, bound by a haunted mask. Poes themselves are now able to possess Link in this game, which affects the player's movement by reversing the controls, while the Poes' masks laugh above Link's head until they're finished toying with him, then disappear without a trace. This all pales in comparison, though, to the actual scariest creature of the night in this wild world, Tingle. That's right, it's time to talk about Tingle, the eccentric cartographer returning from the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. This character fascinated my brothers and I growing up. He's a delusional, middle-aged man who believes he's a reincarnated fairy. First seen in this game imprisoned on Windfall Island for unclear reasons. It can be inferred that he stole the Picto Box hidden in the crawlspace of the town jail, which also hides human skulls, since he does know about it, but Tingle claims he was mistaken for a troublemaker and disrespectfully locked up here. In the HD version, we're given a little more detail as Zunari, the salesman, explains that he originally traveled with Tingle to Windfall Island, but the man was immediately arrested based on his somewhat suspicious looks and thrown right into jail. This joke about his incarceration would be honored later in Breath of the Wild, with Tingle's shirt being found in the Castle Town prison ruins where sinners were imprisoned. Whether or not you choose to believe the faux fairy to be innocent, his true intentions are concerning at best. After releasing him from his shackles, Tingle returns to his home on Tingle Island, where we can stare in awe at a monument of his truly in the form of his own spinning head crowning a giant wooden tower reportedly powered by fairy magic. That sounds fun and whimsical, but in actuality the tower spins by way of manual labor carried out by Tingle's own family, and a stranger. It is here we meet his twin brothers Knuckle and Ankle. The latter brother's apparent favorite proverb is, "One may as well hang for a stolen sheep as for a stolen lamb," which is a grim way of saying that if the punishment for a bad action and a worse one is the same, there's no reason not to do the worse one. What the heck, Nintendo? He's reportedly happiest when he's tending to the Tingle Island flower garden, but we never get to see him do that throughout the entire course of the playthrough. Instead, Ankle and another Tingle lookalike, David Jr., are made to indefinitely push this wheel to make the tower spin because Tingle is deranged. Despite his similar appearance, David Jr. is not actually related to Tingle or his brothers at all. You see, when he was 17 years old, David Jr. set out to plunder the legendary ghost ship his now deceased father once saw with his own eyes. However, his ship was wrecked after a spell of seasickness, and David Jr. awoke in a daze on Tingle Island, suddenly dressed in his current uniform and forced to work under Tingle. Besides Ankle telling David Jr. that self comes before wealth, no mention of compensation is given. So is David Jr. truly an indentured servant, or is he justly paid for his service? One would hope the latter is true, as Tingle must be rolling in rupees after charging Link to decipher the Triforce charts, which are necessary to save the world, only adding to Tingle's moral ambiguity. I could honestly speak much more about the oddly darker side to Tingle, taking future games into consideration, but that's a topic for another time. So let's save our rupees for now, but before I move on from the misunderstood mapmaker, I would be remiss not to mention certain distressing dialogue seen exclusively via the Tingle Tuner, an item from the original that was replaced with the now useless Tingle bottle in Wind Waker HD, because again, Miiverse is dead. For those not aware, the Tingle Tuner was a truly incredible feature accessed by connecting the Game Boy Advance to the GameCube with a link cable, technology explained in Universe by Tingle to run on fairy telepathy. It allowed a second player to control a cursor with Tingle's beautiful face on it and assist player 1 by offering a varied selection of items, some with benefits unique to the Tingle Tuner, like the Tingle Balloon, which notably acts similar to the hover boots from Ocarina of Time by allowing Link to walk on air for several seconds. What's more, as I just alluded to, Tingle offers tips, quips, and comments relating to where Link is in the game, which curiously includes mention of a secret message he finds written underneath a skull in Dragon Roost Cavern. It's actually a note some poor explorer wrote as they were nearing death, before mentioning treasure they stashed away in another room. Another concerning death note says the following: "Will this be the last time I ever look upon the sun?" Special thanks to Anton and Kareg, Alex, for dumping all of this dialogue online for easy reference, so I don't have to resort to memory, as I sadly no longer have the equipment necessary to play through the original game with a GBA like this. There's some great stuff on here that Wii U only players never got to see, like Tingle claiming the mushrooms that grew on his pillow in the Windfall Island jail cell were quite tasty. Despite him still holding an old grudge he asks you to take care of by bombing the jail that once held him. Seriously. An actual fairy worth mentioning in this video is the Queen of all Fairies, a large childlike sprite who first appears by lifting her head up with her back turned to the camera as the typical Great Fairies Fountain intro begins on harp. Then, as the baby-faced queen turns her head, a creepy, carnivalesque, toy-like version of the song plays instead, as she giggles with those blank eyes signature to the Great Fairies of this game. This deity holds a dolly resembling a miniaturized version of the standard Great Fairies, which has eerie implications even if she isn't a malevolent presence. As the queen of the fairy world, are these Great Fairies just her playthings? After raising her doll into the air and stretching out its limbs without physically touching it, she smashes the toy to summon forth two standard fairies endued with the elements of ice and fire, who then fly into Link to power up his bow and arrows. If that wasn't upsetting enough, the Fairy Queen then starts swaying back and forth, before hitting on Link, which sparks a priceless reaction from the King of Red Lions, and hanging listlessly like the doll she was just holding a minute ago. Does that mean that this isn't her true form and she's simply communicating with Link through a large puppet? I'm not sure I'd like to know. While on the topic, there's a quirk specific to Wind Waker involving fairies that revive Link when he's downed, in that they, unlike all other similar fairies in the series, express a great sadness when they're captured and stuffed into a bottle. Except for maybe Skyward Sword, where they repeatedly ram into the side of the glass, presumably to try and escape. The Wind Waker fairies, though, emote with a big frown plastered on their face, and the way Link holds the bottle even makes the wand they hold look like a big old teardrop, which is admittedly easier to see in standard definition. Okay, before really sinking down into the depths of the Great Sea for the final showdown against Ganondorf, I need to first take care of a few smaller side quests. I'm now going to do a speedrun of all the minor dark aspects I think are worth mentioning, but couldn't quite fit in with the rest of this musty old script. Number 1. Jump scares. There are actually quite a few that don't involve the Moblins or Redeads, including a horde of Keese, who are only visible after lighting this underground grotto, and a foggy submarine that reveals a Wizrobe only when this switch is pressed. Another is actually part of a cutscene in the Wind Temple, where, upon Makar planting the last seed in this room, 4 floor masters suddenly appear and drag him into their void as the camera zooms into it. There's also the astounding number of Moblins waiting for Link in the Savage Labyrinth, though I think the frame rate down there is even scarier. Number 2. Link's ability to control animals, statues, and even people is unsettling to think about. The command melody is especially eerie, as it's a song that allows its performer to enter the mind of another and completely take over their body without any real restrictions, like a time limit. After conducting the song, Link is shown to be totally absorbed in a trance with his eyes closed as he intensely concentrates, and his hands move in a circular motion like a puppet master. Do Makar and Medley, for example, fall entirely under this spell, and forget everything they've done under Link's control? Are they aware of what's happening as their body is being moved around against their own free will while someone else hijacks the driver's seat? Either option is discomforting, even if Link would never do them harm. But Link's not truly the one in control, now is he? I have to talk about the seagulls too. Placing this pair that looks like a sweating, screaming face atop Link's head reportedly steals the hearts of these birds and somehow allows the boy to manipulate them in the same manner as the command melody. You can even sacrifice one by making it nosedive into a bomb on Dragon Roost Island just to fatten Link's wallet, or cruelly destroy Sue Belle's precious jar. Just don't speak to her directly after, she still knows it was you. Number 3. I know that his intent is to use the pictographs he has Link take around the island to help the victims' subjects change their ways, but it's funny to me that Lenza requires Link to capture the instance of pure fear on this individual's face, and makes it very clear that he needs to see the moment the fear reverberates through his soul, just to help this timid man conquer his cowardice. Number 4. Where did this Goron get his hands on these skull tower idols made of the fossilized skulls of strange creatures? It certainly stands out from the rest of the game's decorations, mainly because it occasionally jiggles on its own without input from Link. They should have probably been exorcised before Zunari put them up for sale, but I guess it's too late now. Number 5. Orca suffered a serious injury that ended his dream of being a swordsman. His figurine description goes on to claim that he returned to Outset and became a fisherman, but as we discussed earlier, there are no fish in these waters. So is he a monster hunter? These look like shark or Georg jaws to me. Number 6. Needle Rock Isle seems to be connected to the ghost ship, because this sign reads, "To the living, light the 6 torches and dive down to the sea floor. Guide the lost spirit of the boat that forever wanders in darkness." However, the ghost ship chart is not found here, but on the island below it, Diamond Step. Lighting all of the torches in this room simply rewards Link with rupees in the final version, but is this perhaps where the ghost ship chart was originally planned to be found? Alright, I think that's enough of a detour above Hyrule, so it's now time to take the revived Master Sword in hand, the same hand the reassembled Triforce of Courage now resides in, and plunge into the sunken depths of the Forgotten Kingdom, so that the unholy barrier sealing off Ganon's tower from Hyrule Castle can be broken, just like this now tragically broken statue of the Hero of Time. Upon besting flashback bosses, conquering yet another catacomb, and climbing a long set of staircases Ganondorf's always been a big fan of, we come to what just may be my favorite cutscene in the entire game. The build-up is fantastic, as it's actually cleverly an inverse of Ocarina of Time's climax, where instead of the music getting louder and louder as Link ascends, the background track here softens in volume as Link climbs until everything is dead silent, likely because Zelda's napping and he doesn't want to wake her. Just kidding. Upon reaching his destination, Link silently wades through a serene pool of water to the center of the base of the tower's spire, where an unconscious Zelda can be seen through the parting of a semi-transparent curtain, along with a focused, contemplative Ganondorf reading her dreams. He interprets nothing but vast ocean, and proceeds to scorn the gods for sealing Hyrule underneath its waves. His eyes are all white during this monologue, which ends with a cut back to his partially obscured profile, now completely shadowed out besides those glowing eyes, while his body sways back and forth, allowing disproportionately long arms to sprout out to the unsettling sound of bones breaking and reforming, not dissimilar to Link's mask transformations in Majora's Mask. Next are his shoulders, which violently bulk up and spread out, before the demon suddenly grows immensely tall and contorts from side to side as his figure is obscured and a towering shadow is cast over a horrified Link. The camera zooms in on his shocked expression, while the suspenseful strings of the background music build. Our imagination runs wild until the action cuts back, and we get a pan from the bottom to the top of an uncannily shaking creature as the translucent curtain lifts to reveal the boar-looking puppet Ganon, with the real Ganon as its master. The thing then abruptly enlarges again, slamming down its swelled-up fists to intimidate Link. Its appendages are made up of ball joints that extend and resize at will to attack, so Puppet Ganon can stretch out its arms to lunge at Link while keeping the rest of itself stationary. If the string keeping its neck elevated is cut, the morbid marionette's head slumps down. It can eerily spin around in place, swinging its lifeless tail and body around and around in an unnatural way. After 3 hits to its weak spot, the creepy puppet flops up and down until it stays still face down in the water, Link prematurely celebrates while the usual fanfare starts playing, but quickly twists into a sinister version of the song as the boss is raised up by its persisting red heartstring. Its limbs retract inside of its body, which proceeds to writhe and warp before emerging anew as an unsightly spider via smoke cloud, greeting the player with unfocused eyes before launching up into the air and out of sight. The arachnid abomination slams down onto its stomach with its many legs spread out, then quickly raises itself back up to the ceiling. Subduing the spider devil by keeping an eye on its reflection in the water causes the cretin to wriggle and thrash about, then transform one last time into an aggressive, relentless snake that finally explodes once defeated, sending its literal lifeline, the red string that kept it mobile, down so that Link may climb it to face the real thing. It's a long way up, and Link is as tired as can be, but it doesn't stop Ganondorf's monologuing, as it's time to sit through another. I don't mind it at all, we need more Ganondorf monologues. This time, he speaks of the place he hails from, the Gerudo Desert. It was an environment of extremes, he recalls, as burning winds were brought by the sunrise, followed by frigid gales when the night fell. I live in Tucson, Arizona, so I can kind of understand where he's coming from. No matter the time of day, the wind always carried death. The grass, or wind, was always greener in Hyrule, which seemed to bring life rather than the suffering and ruin he knew all too well. I coveted that wind, I suppose, he says as the camera zooms in on his pensive stare, looking out past the space that lay before him and his enemy. Ganondorf having a real discussion that isn't about his sheer lust for power or how he'll crush Link is refreshing for this series. This version of Ganondorf honestly humanizes him the most by giving him a sympathetic drive to explain how he came to be in this position. He doesn't just desire power because that's what bad guys do. He feels he was wronged in this crapshoot that life can be, which is justification enough for him to take what was never handed to him, by any means necessary. The man argues some fair points, as every well-written villain should, but his ambition has become too distorted as he's willing to go as far as to murder innocents to achieve it. So he needs to effectively be dealt with to secure a future for the world above. All these years of scrupulous planning and inflicting pain onto others as a result has led to the 3 Triforce bearers gathered together, so Ganondorf can finally summon the golden relic to touch so that his wish may be granted. The gods haven't listened to him yet in this life, but he knows they'll have to pay attention to him when the Triforce is made whole again. With Zelda out of commission and her Triforce of Wisdom seized, all that stands in his way now is Link. Slowly turning his way to make eye contact, the King of Evil lunges forth with a deranged look on his face and freezes for a second before slugging our unfortunate puny hero thrice. Disarmed and enervated, Link can do nothing but watch as his greatest foe waltzes over and steals the 3rd and final Triforce piece from within him. Ganondorf then relishes the moment as the unified golden triangle descends from the sky. With an arm confidently stretched well above his own head, he proclaims his wish to the heavens for Hyrule to be ascended from its watery tomb, and for him to be its new leader. Before Ganondorf can place that hand on the holy artifact to secure his decree, however, he sees that the King of Red Lions, aka the King of Hyrule, who, teleported behind him off screen, has beaten him to it. His wish is the opposite of Ganondorf's, to wash away the ancient land and to give these 2 children a life above its waves. What happens next is astonishing, a top 5 Zelda moment for sure. Ganondorf just puts his arm down and laughs, but it isn't a pleasant laugh in the slightest. It's a laugh of frustration and agony of a manic man who just lost everything he's worked his entire existence for. Ganondorf was so close to fulfilling his life's goal only to have it suddenly snatched away before his very eyes. It's not fair. Ganondorf roars in a broken hysteria as he cocks his head up to the flash flood soon to drown him. Understanding his time is limited and with literally nothing left to lose, he brandishes 2 blades and turns towards a now conscious Link and Zelda with an insane rage in his eyes. His dream may be shattered and his life nearly over, but he can still die exacting his revenge. The fight itself is pretty frightening and anxiety-inducing, as Ganondorf immediately leaps into the air with his weapons drawn, hurtling towards the screen with ferocity. It's a no-holds-barred duel to the death against a man 3 times Link's size, all while the torrent of seawater encloses the arena. After getting pierced with a few light arrows from Zelda's bow, Ganondorf's decided he's had enough, and leers with a look that could kill as he calmly sheathes one of his swords and backhands Zelda with enough force to knock her out cold. Why he didn't just kill her at this point, I'm not sure, but as a result of leaving her alive, the girl shakes it off soon enough and hatches the idea to shoot her righteous arrows not at Ganondorf directly, but at Link's projectile-deflecting mirror shield to ricochet into and stun him so that Link can land a literal killing blow. One more successful A-press from here launches Link skyward after swiftly slashing his now dazed opponent, rendering him open to a downward strike straight into his skull. The screen fades to white, and after just a couple of seconds that feel like forever because of the surprise of what just happened, the game fades back in to reassure you that what you thought you just saw was real. About a third of the Master Sword's blade has been lodged into the forehead of the Zelda series' most formidable foe. Link stoically stands in place, frozen atop his enemy still clutching the sword that just did his arch-rival in. The next cut to Ganondorf shows the sword about halfway to his brain, and with Ganondorf's dying words, the man groans, then chuckles and utters, "The wind, it is blowing." This could be read a few different ways. I interpreted these last words to mean him feeling the breeze of Hyrule one last time before he and it eternally drowns, which further emphasizes his insatiable obsession with the Hyrule of old. It also nicely wraps up the more tragic aspect of his character, in that he's forever cursed to covet that wind he'll never be able to have, because forces of good will always exist to turn the tides and push back his evil intent. Ganondorf could also simply be remembering his harsh childhood in the Gerudo Desert, referencing those aforementioned winds carrying death and how they've finally come for him. Though I've also seen some fans comment about how they thought the line referred to the proverbial winds of fate, and how they'll always blow in favor of Link and Zelda, but never for him or his people. Whatever the case may be, the Master Sword then completely encases the brute in stone, sealing him and itself together under the ocean forever. A fact which has yet to be disproven, as they've stayed dormant in every subsequent game directly following the Wind Waker's timeline. Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks feature different ultimate swords to wield and new main antagonists to face. But getting back to our Link here who just killed a man, the boy nearly collapses in exhaustion before Zelda catches him, and the two listen to the solemn words of their king. He speaks about the regrets of his past, and how his unhealthy rumination on those regrets is not dissimilar to Ganondorf. So he wishes to remain and be washed away with the ancient land, while Link and Zelda move on to new horizons and towards a hopeful future for themselves. The king says his goodbyes right before the falling water finishes flooding the last of the ground they're all standing on, and fully submerges the trio underneath the sea. Link and Zelda begin floating up towards the surface, shielded in a magic bubble, likely because of the king's Triforce wish, so Link reaches out in an attempt to save him. The king does begin to stretch out his hand, but soon retracts it and slumps his head down, quietly accepting his fate as our hero is risen to safety. This act is the king essentially committing suicide so that the old Hyrule truly dies with him, allowing these children to live unburdened and unbound in a new world. Upon being rescued by Tetra's crew, which includes Errol, at least temporarily, as she's now wearing a piratey red dress with skulls on it, a final cutscene shows Link on his no longer sentient boat, since the king has passed, as revealed via the soulless eyes, next to Tetra's pirate ship, preparing to sail out to try and discover new land. All of Outset Island sees off Link and his new friends, which probably breaks Grandma's heart again. Though let's be real, it's not like you were spending much time with her throughout the game anyway, so sorry Grandma. I'll be back for more soup one day. Maybe, but probably not. Phantom Hourglass on the Nintendo DS picks up right after this moment, and I guess Link had an accident off screen soon after the credits rolled, leaving his unspirited ship resting in peace at the bottom of the ocean, because he's shown aboard the pirate ship in this sequel game instead. Continuity errors aside, Phantom Hourglass is a fun follow-up to an amazing, timeless game, which I may get to for dark aspects eventually, but for now, I'd like to leave my fate to wherever the wind guides me. I'd like to take a moment to thank my amazing longtime Patreon supporters. If you'd like to have your name displayed in a fun way at the end of every one of my videos like this and get early access to upcoming projects, you can sign up now at patreon.com/ThaneGaming. Thank you for your continued support, and thanks to everyone else for watching. I'll see you for more Zelda next time.